What's going on YouTube? It's your boy fineokay, and today I'm bringing you guys the Season 6 patch notes. There's a lot of changes going on at the start of Season 6, so I'm going to try and go through this as quickly as possible. I don't want this to be a 2-hour long video, but I'm definitely going to go over the important and interesting things from the perspective of a professional solo laner, and just of a content creator as well. So mainly going to go over the balance things, zoomed in a little bit so you guys can actually see the text. We're going to skip over stuff like this. There's definitely important things here, but I'm just going to link it. The patch notes in the description so you guys can read it if you really want to. I just want to get towards the balance side of things so I can analyze that stuff. So starting off with some item balance, we're going to the blessings: attacker's blessing, defender's blessing, specialist blessing. Those are all blessings for non-conquest, which I don't really care about. So warrior's blessing, definitely a conquest starter item. So they increase the health and mana restored per trigger from 30 to 40. That's a decent buff. That's basically just back to what it was before. And also with the evolved, you get to 15 protection instead of 10 now. So it's literally exactly what it was at the start of the season, I believe. Actually, I believe that at the start of the season, it was at 10, and then they buffed it to 15 a little bit in something like that, and they nerfed it back down to 10. But basically, it's back to what it was before. Obviously, it's a buff, so it could make it more relevant and everything like that. But it really just depends on what they do to other things and other starts and other options that you can start in the early game. However, I didn't mention this before, but I haven't read over it, but I was watching the patch notes and I caught a lot of the changes. So this isn't my complete initial reaction to all these changes. But with that being said, it allows me to tell you guys that they didn't make any change to Guardian's Blessing, and that was one of the big issues that we had at the towards the later stages of Season 5, was that everybody was just going Guardian's Blessing. There's no reason to ever build Warrior's Blessing, and it was basically just an AFK lane and let the minions die so you can get your Guardian stacks. They did not change Guardian's Blessing at all, so that I am pretty sad about, because I don't know if it's going to shift the meta at all, especially with just this one change. However, there are some things that have changed down the road on these patch notes that may affect whether or not you get Guardian's Blessing, and may affect whether or not it will be as AFK of a lane as it was before. So Horrific Emblem, decreased slow from 40 to 30%, decreased attack speed flow from 25% to 15%. Definitely a nerf, but I don't think this really is all that big of a deal. They definitely nerfed the upgraded Horrific Emblem as well, but they didn't change any of the other relics, and it still looks like it's going to do the job of slowing them and slowing their attack speed and just giving you pressure level 1 and dual lane, level 2 and stuff like that. So I don't really know if this is too good of a change. Definitely a step in the right direction, but just with the fact that it didn't change any other relics, it doesn't really matter. This is very, very interesting, and I want to talk about this a little bit longer than the other things. Is that there's a new item. It's an elixir, something you can consume, and it's permanent, and it provides 18% movement speed. So it does not stack with your boots, so you can't just go boots plus this and then have a crazy amount of movement speed. However, it does stack with other movement speed items, I do believe, such as like your ring tree for the magicals and then your katana tree for your physicals, right? So it does stack with that. But the more important thing is that it's a permanent 18%, which is exactly what boots provides, 80% movement speed. So what this means is that late game, you can sell your boots, purchase this for 2,000 gold, and then have an extra slot for another damage item, another tank item, another utility item, whatever it is. So this is actually going to shift the late game meta quite a lot, especially considering that usually 6 damage items is more impactful than 6 tank items, especially with the relevance of percent pen items and stuff like that. If you go a 6th tank item, you're already getting your percent pen shredded, and you're getting a lot of your health shredded as well with some of the health damage items and stuff like that, percent health damage items. So it's definitely favoring the damage side, but there's also some utility in getting a 6th item slot. So like maybe you can purchase your Magi's that you weren't able to before because you lose it on DPS. Now you have a Magi's for whatever important CC that you have to block, or something like that. So this is definitely an interesting change, and I do think the meta is going to shift a little bit because of that, and we'll definitely have to wait to see what exactly it goes towards. So now going on to the magical items, we're going to just kind of breeze through this a little bit. They introduced a new item called, well, not a new item, it's the same item as Doom Orb, but now Doom Orb is a tier 3 item, and now it has a tier 2 called Cursed Orb. And they both have passives. The Cursed Orb passive is just basically a weakened version of the full Doom Orb passive. However, the full Doom Orb now has 135 magical power on it, 200 mana, 6% movement speed, 25 MP5, all these stats, and you get movement speed from the passive. Stacks up to 5 times, so you can get it up to 11% movement speed, and then you can also get 30 power from the passive. You get 165 magical power from this item. It's a lot of gold. Or I do think that it will be picked up and at least experimented with, just because the stats on it are pretty insane, especially with the movement speed and everything like that. So Interesting new way to implement Doom Orb. They are nerfing Book of Souls, which is basically the tier 2 of Book of Thoth. Not basically, it is the tier 2 of Book of Thoth. That was basically the start that every mage went, just because it had so much power on it and it would help your clear so much and give you so much early game damage. And then they nerf the tier 3 Book of Thoth. Well, they decreased the cost of it, but they made it so that you only have the same amount of power if you go at least 2 or 3 mana items in your magical build. So it's definitely a nerf, even though it costs a little bit less, and even though the overall mana conversion is a little bit bigger, it only works from the mana that you buy from your items and not your base mana. So it's definitely a nerf, unless you're buying a lot of mana items on like something like Kukulkan and stuff like that. Then you'll have the same amount of power or more. But yeah, this is a really big deal. I just want to get to the important things for our Soul laners. Soul Reaver has been nerfed, thankfully, finally. It's been nerfed before, but it just didn't quite get the job done. This is definitely a nerf that will definitely hit home for us, is that the Soul Reaver's bonus damage will take 50% less damage from this effect on subsequent hits. So if you hit somebody, proc Soul Reaver, and you hit them again immediately, it'll only do 50% of that damage. So it's going to reduce that damage by a lot, which is very, very important, because you would just get shredded by mages that have 4 damaging abilities, because they would just proc Soul Reaver 4 times with their percent pen. It would just one-shot you, basically. So this is definitely very good. Obsidian Shard, another change that we are worried about as soul laners and untanked players, is that they increase the cost from 2150 to 2300. So that's a nice little nerf, 150 extra gold. However, they increase magic power from 60 to 70. 150 gold for 10 power, not that big of a deal. That's still a little bit extra power, and it's definitely going to be useful for killing squishies. And I would say it's probably worth it for mage players. And this is basically a mandatory item against tanks anyway, so I don't really think this has changed anything. They're still going to have the same amount of percent pen. This is still going to shred tanks too easily. I think this is kind of a weird change and doesn't really get the job done, unlike the Soul Reaver change, which definitely did. Typhon's Fang increased from 10% to 15% lifesteal. Who cares? Dynasty Plate Helm, they increased the power from 44 to 55. Kind of interesting change. Think mage tank items, or mage bruiser items, I should say, that you go for damage but also a little bit more tankiness, are kind of weird, just because I think it's really annoying for like assassin players to try and kill characters like that when they're already pretty good. So they got to be careful with this, because we don't want to go back to the meta where everyone's buying Dynasty Plate Helm. So just a small incremental change, not too big of a deal. Stone of Binding increased magical power from 20 to 30, and they also changed the passive, so now it applies a debuff instead of giving pen to you and your teammates. It applies a debuff to the god that you hit with the CC, which means that their protections will be reduced by the same amount of pen that you got before. But it just means that if you aren't in range, or if you weren't in range before with the Stone of Binding aura, like if you weren't near your guardian when they CC'd that person, now you'll still get the benefit of it, because it'll be a debuff on the enemy character and not a buff on an ally who may not be in range of the Stone of Binding aura. So nice. I think that's actually a buff for Stone of Binding. And also, Stone of Binding, pretty good item, I think, in general. So Malice getting a new passive. So successfully hitting an enemy with a critical strike will subtract 10 or 2 seconds, not 10. That would have been insane. From all your abilities currently on cooldown except your ultimate ability. This effect can only happen once every 5 seconds. I think it's a really bad passive. I don't know who you're going to build this on. If it didn't have this 5-second cooldown on it, maybe it had like a 3-second cooldown, it might be a little bit better. But that's just a long time, and there's just no real reason to build it, in my opinion. Poison Star increased cost from 2400 to 2500 and reduced the critical strike chance from 20% to 15%. I am not too sure how much this is going to do for the item. Still pretty cheap for what it does. I mean, the passive on Poison Star is just insane. It's just a crazy item, and the critical strike chance being reduced is nice, just so it's you crit less often for the passive that you get from it. But the slow and the damage reduction on the passive, I think, is just too strong, and this item will definitely still be picked up. And a lot of times you are picking up in conjunction with Wind Demon, which is being reduced by 100 in gold as well. So basically it's the same amount of gold for both these items, which are probably going to go anyway. So the build path for Hunter is pretty much unchanged, apart from 5% loss in crit chance. I just don't see this as kind of a silly change. I don't think that's going to get the job done at all. Odysseus Bow getting buffed. So a lot of these items, these physical items, are actually getting buffed just because they want to shift away from this magical focus meta where mages are dominant and guardians are dominant. And that's the attempt, at least. So that's what we'll be seeing. Odysseus Bow getting a buff 50% to 60% in your basic attack power scaling. So basically the lightning is going to do a little bit more damage. So it's 10%, which is, it's not that crazy of a number, but it's the fact that it's proccing every 4 times. So it's 10% every 4 times that you auto attack. And let's say you're just auto attacking pretty quickly Like, that's a lot of damage over like a 10-second period. So definitely a big buff to Odysseus Bow, which is already a decent item. I think like maybe it wasn't being bought completely just because of crit builds and you don't have a lot of options for it, but now that you don't even have to have boots, that's the thing though, the fact that you're not going to have boots late game, that you can buy your elixir, you could just sell your boots and get an oboe and just like be shredding people and just doing so much damage with your crit plus the amount of attack speed you get from this. It's like, I don't even think they needed to buff this because it's probably going to be picked up a lot in place of your boots. Silver Branch Pro, they increase the physical power from 20 to 30. Whatever, still probably a terrible item. Runic Shield, increase the health from 100 to 150. Runic Shield was already in a good spot. Not too sure about this this buff. Definitely a step in the right direction. 50 health. And not a step in the right direction because it was already bought, but just a step in the right direction in the fact that it's trying to make warriors better, because this is the only time you're really seeing this item being bought is on warriors or bruiser assassins. So definitely good for that. 150 health, but like I said, I think it's already a decent item, so I'm not really too sure. However, they did increase the cost of Ansal to 2150, which I believe is the same exact cost as Runic Shield, so now you have the option to go both, which is cool because a lot of times if you're going this tree, you would have barely enough gold for Ansal, but you wouldn't have enough gold for Runic, so sometimes you just be like, all right, whatever, I'm just going to go Ansal instead of Runic. So now you don't really have to make that decision. You can pretty much always go Runic Shield unless you really want the cooldown you're getting and the passive from Ansal. So Cudgel, these are big changes right here. So Cudgel increased physical power from 5 to 10, decrease health from 100 to 50, which is just the tier 1 of it, so that gives more options for you to start that with another blessing, basically, because you're going to have 10 power from it now, so it's going to help with your clear early on, but it's not going to make you crazy tanky with just a level 1 with 100 health. But they also, this is really big, they decrease the cost of Shillelagh, which is the tier 2 of Blackthorn Hammer, from 1500 to 1300, and they increase the physical power from 10 to 15. So like I said before, more power makes your clear better early on, and it makes it more of a viable option to start. So now you may not even go a blessing, you can start tier 2 Shillelagh or tier 2 Blackthorn Hammer, have it for 1300 gold, buy a couple pots, and then rush your Blackthorn Hammer, and you're going to have 450 health plus 35 power, because as you can see, they buffed Blackthorn Hammer down here and changed the passive just a little bit, not too big of a deal, but 35 power, 450 health, and I believe MP5 on it, or HP5 on it. That's a really, really, really good item to rush, and it's going to make you super tanky with 450 extra health early on, plus the fact that all warriors are getting a base health increase. I think it was 70 max extra health at level 20. So warriors gonna have 70 extra health. Every single warrior is gonna have 70 extra health at level 20. And the fact that Soul Reaver is getting nerfed, these are definitely good changes and steps in the right direction to help out warriors. However, I don't know how much it's going to affect the AFK-ness of the lane, or the fact that you can't kill each other, because if you're rushing items with lots of health and the starter items are making you tanky in themselves, then I really don't know if it's going to change the fact that you're not able to kill each other ever. And then Runeforged Hammer increased physical power from 40 to 55 and decreased the health from 250 to 200, making it more of a damaging item. 255 power is actually a lot, and the passive on it is decent, the extra damage when you're CCing people, so not too bad. These bruiser items getting buffed are definitely good. However, the fact that pen items didn't really see any changes, especially for magicals and even for physicals, is really concerning, because it's just, I don't know if it's actually going to end up mattering. I still feel like the warriors are just going to be getting shredded by tank shredding items and stuff like that. So Gauntlet of Thieves increased the health from 200 to 275. A little bit weird, because the problem with Gauntlet of Thieves is if you try and rush this in support, you're not going to have any physical or magical protections early on, so you're just going to be getting owned by junglers and stuff. So I don't know if this really changes that much. However, it definitely buffs it in the late game if you want to go it later on in the game to get the aura for these late game sieges and late game team fights around Fire Giant. Emerald Talisman increased MP5 from 6 to 10. That's just the tier 2 of Stone of Gaia. I don't know, maybe making it more viable as a starter, just going the tier 2 and then rushing Stone of Gaia, but I'm not too sure. However, it does help, considering Stone of Gaia is getting the cooldown reduced to 45 seconds instead of 60 seconds, so you're just going to be able to get that heal more often with these knockups and stuff. They also reduce the time it takes for you to get the heal from 10 seconds to 5 seconds, so it's a quicker burst heal, basically. I don't really know if that matters too much. Usually anti-heal runs out, and so you get a little bit more healing from the 10 seconds, so maybe it's actually kind of a nerf, because if the anti-heal lasts on you, you're not going to get much from 5-second burst heal, whereas you would get a little bit more from the 10 seconds if the anti-heal wore out. So I think this item was in a decent spot. So I think it might be picked up a little bit more now that they buffed it. Should regrowth decrease the cost from 2100 to 2000, and then increase HP5 and MP5 from 10 to 15 respectively, which is pretty good. I mean, it's just a niche item. You're not buying it every game on every warrior, because not even every warrior has self-sustain that can proc the passive. And it's usually better on characters that every time the self-sustain ability is up, the Shield of Regrowth passive will proc, such as like Hercules and stuff like that, or sometimes even Amma. Her one cooldown is definitely much shorter than Shield of Regrowth, but you basically have it up pretty much every time for Shield of Regrowth. So those two characters can benefit from it a lot. So basically buffing those niche scenarios where you would be getting it. And sometimes you'll see it in support on some characters, like maybe it's like Baron or something like that, or like Hell support, or whatever. So interesting buff. Spectral armor, increase physical protection from 60 to 70, and decrease the damage dealt to you from critical strikes from 60% to 50%. So both buffs. And the reason they're doing this is because there's just no real reason to pick up spectral armor over Eye of the Nemean Lion when Eye of the Nemean Lion is a thing. 70 protection, so it had more protections before, so you could purchase it more often, and the damage it reflected would benefit you more than the reduced damage from spectral armor. Now you're actually going to have to maybe think about whether or not which one you want to go, and I think this is definitely makes the item a lot better, of course, because it also has CC reduction on it. Spectral armor has CC reduction on it, so definitely an item that will help against these crit builds that hunters are going for. I'd say mainly for supports, the spectral armor might be decent, but definitely for solo laners. So mask changes. Basically, they're nerfing Lotus Mask because they increase damage dealt from 20% to 25%. So basically, you're going to be doing less damage when you buy this item, and increase the healing down from 20% or minus 20% to minus 25%, both of them. So you're going to be healing less and doing less damage if you do go this item. You're still going to feel the same amount of tanky though, so that's good. Ranged Mask, increase ability damage dealt from 50% to 20%. This means both basic attack and ability damage are increased the same amount, so the description will be simplified. Just say increased damage dealt, so increased damage overall on Ranged. Only problem with Ranged right now is that you're just so squishy if you go this item, and it's just really hard to build, because if you're building Bruiser and then you go Ranged, then all those tank items that you built in your Bruiser build are just basically gone because you're getting one shot anyway. So it's just a really rough item to go, and I don't really see it being bought that often. And the only benefit you really have is if you have a Ranged and you have Blink, and you blink and use this ability that you really want to one-shot somebody with, and then get that off, but you're going to instantly die anyway, and a lot of times in Smite, that's not the most worth trade. So Boo's Mask buffs, they changed physical power from 20 to 30, and the magical power from 50 to 65, so just buffs all in all. The weird thing about Boo's Mask is it's an item that reduces your damage. It has 10% damage reduction, but then it also has power on it. So it's really weird, because it's almost like the power is trying to cancel out the fact that you are reducing your own damage. So I don't know the exact math on it and what it would take, but it's almost like they're buffing it to a point where the reduction that you get from it will not matter. It will just cancel it out, which is just really weird. I think that having power on an item that reduces your damage is just odd. So I think this change is weird. Warrior class, base stats, like I talked about before, increase base HP of all yours by 10, and then 3 per level. So there's 20 levels, so 3 times 20 is 60, so 10 plus 60 is 70. So you're going to be at 70 extra health at level 20. So that's pretty good for warriors. And plus these items that give you a lot of health are being buffed as well. So you might see a lot of that. And then also, like I said, Soul Reaver being nerfed. So all in all, health more OP. So, but yeah, this is getting into the god balance now. So Amu's and Cobb coming up next. His Swarm is just getting a 1 second reduction in the cooldown of it, and then his Honey is now at 60% or 60 mana cost at all ranks instead of 75 to 95. Buffs are Amu's and Cobb. Got to be careful with AMC because he was buffed back to his season 5 prowess beginning of the season. It's just that he's not very good because he's very, very easy to kill, and it's a camping duo meta. So if that changes at all, you got to be careful with AMC because he does have the same numbers he did have at the end of last season, which made him really, really good when it was just a solo duo lane. Anubis Mummify increased the duration of his CC from 1.2 to 1.6. So basically what this means is you're going to get an extra tick of your Grasping Hands, which is your Anubis 3, because it's going to be 0.4 more seconds, and I think it ticks every 0.5 seconds, the Anubis 3, and then maybe a little bit more damage on your ult. You're going to secure a little bit more if they don't have beads, and you're going to get 0.4 more seconds of the damage on your ult, because that ticks very, very often. So just overall more secure damage. Anubis still not going to be good, though, just completely too easy to kill. Anti-heal completely wrecks him. Alquan getting a new passive. So every 20 seconds, Alquan gets a stack of Dragon King's Sword as long as he has a stack. His next non-ultimate ability that deals damage to an enemy god will consume a stack to have its cooldown reduced by 2 seconds and heals Alquan for 5% of his maximum health. Successfully executing enemy god with King of the Eastern Seas fully charges Dragon King's Sword. This effect can stack up to 3 times. So it has 5% on each stack. It stacks 3 times. So 15% heal, which is the equivalent of the 50% lifesteal that you got before on the passive. And then the reduced cooldown on his abilities by 2 seconds. It could be all 3 of your abilities, and you can execute somebody, go back into a fight, use all 3 of your abilities, and then it'll reduce their cooldowns by 2 seconds, and you'll be able to get those back a little bit quicker and kind of be more of a battle mage if you need to. So very interesting change. I don't know if they needed to do this because Alquan isn't really bad because of his passive or anything like that, and his passive I think was perfectly fine before. It was attached to his ultimate, which was weird. So I do think that that's good that they changed that. So changing passives that are attached to abilities I think is good, because then it just becomes an actual passive to their entire kit and not just that one ability. Very crazy change here. So Chug, which is Bacchus's 1, where he gets he drinks and he gets protections and he gets benefits to his abilities, is now available at rank 0, similar to tier 3, how it used to, you have to put a point into it. Tier 3 you used to have to put a point into it so that you could use it. Now it's just available at rank 0 and you can use it for the entire game. So this means that you can just get your burp at level 1 or get your 2 at level 1, whichever you prefer, and sit in your fountain, chug that, get to all the way at the max meter. You're gonna have the extra power, protections, everything like that. So you're basically gonna be OP. No, I don't know if he's gonna be OP, but this is definitely a crazy change, and it's gonna make things very interesting because Bacchus was decent before, I believe, and this is definitely a big buff to him. So we'll see what happens with that. Razor Whip, increased physical power scaling from 28 to 25%, so that's 100% scaling because it ticks 4 times, which Razor Whip is fast at 2. And then her Declaw, and they decrease the mana from 70 to 90 to just 60 at all ranks. You do go Transcendence a lot on Bastet. However, early game you do spam your abilities a lot, so it's oftentimes you'll be running out of mana. So interesting change, helping out Bastet a little bit. Problem is she just doesn't have any CC, so that's one of the things that she has a big flaw in. And at least at the end of season 5, CC junglers were kind of the meta. Baron getting nerfed. The heal from missing health is going from 12.5% to 10%, and life of the party overall health percent damage from 15% to 10%. So just decent nerfs. And these are good nerfs because it changes, or doesn't change, but it helps out the fact that no matter the way you build him, because if you build him bruiser or full damage, you're still getting the benefit of both of these percentages. So now it nerfs his soul lane a little bit and makes it so if you really want to do damage, you have to invest a little bit more into that damage, and not so bruiser. Bologna ult is just getting a little bit of a damage increase because it only, for some reason, only did 100 damage before. Now it does at least 140. So a little bit of a buff, not too big of a deal. Don't think it's going to really change Bologna in any way. But the other changes combined with this may help out a bit. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. Tectonic Shift, Cabrakan, I can't really show you, but basically Cabrakan, instead of having this weird line and then it branches out like a T, like the letter T, it now just has a big old box, a big old rectangle where he'll actually be able to do his damage. So it's just basically an increase in the area that you're going to be suffering from the damage from Cabrakan. Vampire Bats, this is a really weird change in my opinion. Increased buff duration from 210 seconds to 300 seconds, and now it persists through death. So this doesn't really change soul lane too much at all. I mean, maybe it helps out a little bit just to keep your passive up, but this is just such a weird ability now because it lasts for 300 seconds. That's 5 minutes, right? 60 times 5, 300 seconds. And it persists through death. Like, when are you just not gonna have this up, right? Especially as a jungler, you're gonna be, buff spawn every 2 minutes. Are you really not hitting a buff to refresh this passive every 2 minutes? Like, I don't know. It just seems like this is just now a passive for him. Like, he doesn't even have to do anything. He's always going to have his 2 on a camp unless you're intentionally not hitting him with it. So really weird change. Basically, it's just a new passive, I think. You're just always going to have your increased lifesteal and increased healing that you get from Camazot's passive. Kurnanos reduced the cooldown of his ult from 190 seconds. Definitely a good buff because why was his ult at 100 seconds? It's actually not very good ability. And then Bramble Blast increased the base damage from 40 to 200 to 60 to 200. So a buff level 1. One of the problems Cernos has is that his 2 only does 40 damage, and if you just walk out of it, you don't have a lot of secure damage in the 2v2 in dual lane. So now it's just going to buff that a lot and help him out of it because Cernos, I think, he hasn't seen play in a very long time. Just really easy to kill and doesn't really do that much and has a bad level 1. So definitely a step in the right direction. However, his 1 is, I think, a pretty interesting ability and cool. So cool for him to be more in the meta. Fafnir change, completely irrelevant probably. I mean, increased damage on his breath late game, but you're never really getting your breath damage off late game, especially if you're playing it in support. You're initiating and trying to pill for your team, and maybe you're like breathing on them a little bit, but it's just not going to change them that much, especially considering the fact that Fafnir isn't played that much just because of his rough early game and the fact that he doesn't apply as much pressure as some other supports. Hera getting nerfed, I think, is important because I think her ultimate is a really frustrating ability. Argus, it's reducing the cooldown or increasing the cooldown from 70 to 90. Just straight up nerf. Because Argus just chasing around people as often as he did is just really annoying. He's actually really tanky and really hard to deal with, and I think it's, like I said, it's frustrating just because it's like you don't really have to think about it as Hera. You just drop it, boom, Argus goes and does his thing. If you select the target you want him to go on, so definitely a good nerf. Hercules. His Excavate, which is his ultimate, is getting a reduced cooldown from 90 seconds, just straight up 90 seconds at all ranks, to 90 to 70 seconds. So now that you actually might put points in this because it does increase damage every time you put a point into it, plus the fact that it reduces in cooldown now. So if you have full CDR and it's at 70 seconds, that's about 42 seconds cooldown. So 42 seconds or something like that on Hercules ult. And max rank with your full CDR is going to be crazy. Throwing out boulders nonstop, and it does a lot of damage, especially if you get some bounces off. So definitely a buff for Hercules and a buff to me. Isis is getting increased range on her Dispel Magic, which is her 3. It's her silence, and it's a way for her to steal magical protection. And I think it might be physical. No, I think it might just be magical protection, but I'm not really too sure. I'd have to look at that. Actually, let's go look right now. That's why I had this. That's why I had this tab open so that we could see stuff like this. Spell magic, magical protection debuff. Okay, so it's just magical protection. It's 30% though. That's insane. That's a lot. So basically they increased the range of it because it was really wonky ability and it didn't really go that far, but now it goes up to 55 units, which means you can silence mage abilities across the lane and stuff like that. This is actually, I think, a pretty big buff because Isis players are going to be able to silence mages and other characters from pretty far away, even supports that are trying to go on them and stuff like that. I think this is definitely an interesting circle protection increase. I think a little less relevant. I think this is a pretty interesting change and pretty cool. Silence Raijin while he's clearing the wave from like halfway across the lane. Definitely cool. Some changes to Arthur, just a bunch of bug fixes to help him out, make him feel more fluid. However, these are actual changes to his balance. Increase energy gain from 1 to 2 per hit on his Twin Cleave or Blade Storm. Definitely interesting because it hits a lot of times, so you're going to get a lot more energy back for that, so you can charge up your ult quicker. And then Sundering Strike, decrease the charge range from 16 to 12, which basically just means it doesn't go as far. Decrease charge range from 16 to 12. Is that trying to say that his like actual movement of charging forward, or his charge to get to his ult? I'm not too sure about that one. I would assume it's the charge to get to his ult, but it could mean that his range of charging forward to hit somebody. I'm not too sure. I wasn't listening to the patch notes when they were talking about that, so that's my bad. Low-key base stats, decrease damage progression. Well, either way, let me go back to that. If it's the range, that's a nerf, which I don't think they would do. So it must be a buff in the fact that you get your ult sooner. So that's definitely important. So that's nice. Base stats decrease damage progression from 1 to 1.5 damage to 0.75 to 1.5 damage. Okay, so Loki's first hit is not going to be as impactful, especially if you auto cancel. So that's actually a really big deal. So it's definitely a big nerf. And then remove the damage mitigation from this ability on Vanish, which is an invis. I've been saying this for the longest time. Why does his invis have damage mitigation on it? You should be rewarded for hitting him and when he's invisible. That should be a skillful thing that you get rewarded for. And now you finally do. No more damage mitigation on his invisibility, which is very, very important. And honestly a buff to me because I'm always hitting Lokis when they're invisible. They can't hide from me. So nerfs to Loki. Apparently he's had some of the highest winning percentages and highest performances in the stats for Smite for a long time. So that's why they finally nerfed him. So that's definitely good because, I mean, it's Loki. Come on, guys. Osiris Sickle Strike increased the base damage from 60 to 260 to 70 to 270, just 10%, or not 10%, 10 flat damage at all ranks. and Spirit Flail increase in damage as well, just by 5. These are both spammable abilities, so that's going to actually ramp up over time if you're using these abilities a lot. So even though they're small numbers, definitely going to be big in the fact that you're spamming them, especially Sickle Strike. So both these abilities hit hard. How much it's going to change, I'm not really sure. It's really what it comes down to is the utility that Guardians bring versus Warriors, and the fact that you can get to late game. If you can get to late game and not be snowballed on, Guardians will always be better than Warriors. So you got to be careful with changes and stuff like this, because if it becomes a Warrior meta where Warriors are just dominating and doing too much damage and snowballing games, then it's just as bad as having a Guardian meta. So anyway, Pele, Everlasting Flame, decrease duration from 4 to 6, decrease power from 2 per level to 1, is I think what they were trying to say, and that's just her passive. So I think they meant to say decrease duration from 6 to 4. I think both of these are just a little messed up, but just a nerf to her passive. Probably needed. She's one of the top picks right now, being banned pretty much the most, apparently, is what the stats show. That's what Ajax said. So Poseidon base stats increase physical protection from per level from 2.2 to 2.6. Interesting. It just makes it more in line with other mages. So I think it's, what is that, 0.4 per level, and there's 20 levels, so there's a 5, so you get 5 extra protections unless there's some weird rounding issues with that. So 5 extra physical protections at level 20. That's nice, I think, but nothing crazy, nothing going to change with the meta with that. So our Thoth actually has some interesting changes that may change up the meta. They increase the damage to Hieroglyphic Assault, which is just as 1. It hits 3 times, so 15 base flat damage on that. And they changed his Evade and Punish, which is his dash and stun before. Now it's not a stun, but it roots the first god it hits and then slows every god behind it. So it pierces, roots the first god, slows every god. So if there's an Odin right here, 2 Odins behind it, first Odin gets rooted, and then these 2 Odins behind him get slowed. So the root and slows last 1.5 seconds at all ranks, and it's 30% slow at all ranks. That's a pretty good slow. And they increase the scaling on Final Judgment to 120%, just so it hits harder, because definitely losing the stun is a bit of a nerf. However, the fact that it pierces, and if people are grouped up and it's going to be slowing and rooting people, that's pretty interesting. So definitely an interesting change for Thoth. I don't know how much it'll do for him, to be honest, and I don't know whether that will end up being a nerf, just because if you're rooted, you're able to use movement abilities, whereas if you're stunned, you're not able to use your movement abilities or anything really. So if you're rooted, you're still going to be able to return damage and stuff like that. So it's an interesting change. How much it'll help, we'll see. Zeus, I don't even want to talk about. These are really, really weird changes, and a couple of them are actually buffs. There's a nerf to his Aegis Assault so that you can't be throwing out your shield and comboing it with your run as often as possible. It is your clear as well, so you're not going to be clearing as often. However, they just kind of made these weird changes. They messed up the numbers on his multiplication of his charges. Now it's not 1 to 3 for each charge that you have. It's 1 to 2.4, which is just like, it's just wonky to me, and it's just not clean. Like, for the sake of balance, you know, it doesn't have to be clean, but still, like, I don't think Zeus really needed that many changes. And I think he was doing perfectly fine in Conquest, so whatever. But that's pretty much it. That's all of the changes for gods. Notice that Opwash wasn't changed. Let's go look at the gods that weren't changed that we, you know, kind of wanted to see changed. Erling wasn't changed. Opwash wasn't changed. Ardia wasn't changed. I think she's kind of been ridiculous for a while now. Just looking through the gods. For the most part, I think that everything else is pretty much in check. There's a lot of gods that should have seen buffs, I think, that are just like really, really bad. But we all know who those are. So yeah, just some weird things that didn't get nerfed, especially like Opwash. Like I said, I think that's the big thing. Opwash and Erling, the fact that they didn't get adjusted at all is kind of crazy to me, because they've been at the top for so long. Conquest changes, some important stuff here. So I'm just going to summarize it for you so you don't have to read all through these weird formulas and everything. Basically, you get rewarded more for killing somebody who's ahead than you do previously, or you did previously in Season 5. But you do not get rewarded more for killing somebody that's behind. So basically, that's just going to help with comeback potential and gaining more for, you know, shutting somebody down that's really far ahead. So basically, that's what this means for the kill bounty adjustment. So that's really good. Helps skillful play and helps comeback potential. This is the big thing for us soul laners. There's now a new objective called Totem of Ku. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Right next to the soul lane. So it's right behind Fire Giant, literally right behind it, right behind the wall, right behind where Fire Giant is standing. They opened up the map a little bit on the Conquest on Conquest map at Solo Lane, they opened up the little entry right behind Fire Giant. So now it's a little bit wider. And now there's a totem right behind there that you can kill. It's neutral. Both teams can kill it. It does not do damage to you. And it's not whoever last hits it. There's a level of damage that you have to get to, a threshold, and it keeps both teams damage while you're doing damage to it. So say you have to do 300 damage to it. If one team does 150, the other team does 150. It doesn't just automatically die. The other team has to get all the way to 300. So you both have to like get to that level of 300 before it actually dies. So blah blah, the protections on it, whatever, stuff like that. Increases the health, so it's not completely squishy. It spawns at 1 minute, respawns 1 minute after it is successfully taken, but it despawns at 15 minutes, and it probably takes at least 5 seconds to kill. So maximum you're probably going to get is probably around 10 maximum if you're like really efficient with getting it somehow. So you're able to get it like 10 times maybe, and it provides things for your team that isn't just straight up XP and snowball potential. It gives you 5% movement speed, 25 MP5, and 25 gold to each team member when it is taken. And the buffs, the 5% movement speed and 25 MP5, lasts for 10 seconds. And you empower your tower area that it lasts 1 minute. I'm not sure exactly what the empowering of the towers will do. It's if they step into it, they receive the buff. Okay, so they step into the area of the tower and they get the buff and it lasts 10 seconds. So that's what makes sense. I thought it meant that the towers like shoot faster or gain more damage or something like that. So that's not the case. So they just have to walk in the tower to get this buff. So these two things, they're decent. 5% movement speed is interesting, especially for dueling because it's a long lane. Like getting up through that lane, say you're like looking to gank and you get the Totem of Ku and you get that extra movement speed when you're ganking. Maybe it'll help you get a kill or something like that. Maybe the same thing in mid lane or something. It's interesting how much it's going to change to the fact that you want to fight early on and stuff like that and get this totem. I'm not really too sure. I don't think it's going to change all that much in that regard. The 25 gold is nice. However, if you think about it, if you are completely perfect with getting every totem and you're able to say realistically, I don't think you're going to realistically get 10 totems in a game. Realistically, you get like 8. Let's say you get 8 and you're really, really on point with getting that 8. That's 8 and there's 5 of you, so 125. So that's 125 times 8. So that's 1,000 gold for your entire team. So 1,000 gold over the course of 15 minutes for your entire team. But it's not a burst gold, right? It's not like a burst gold fury where you, bam, you get gold fury, you back, and you get your power spike, and then you have a play over the enemy team. It's over the course of time. And that's also an opportunity cost because if you're perfect with it, it's likely that your jungler is helping you get it as well. And that's an opportunity cost for your jungler to be doing that while not being somewhere else on the map and getting like a back camp or stealing a back camp or looking for a gank. So how much this is going to help, I'm not too sure. With the fact that Guardian's Blessing wasn't changed, the fact that Warrior's Blessing was buffed a little bit, all the changes to Warriors and everything like that, but no changes to Guardians and no real changes to the snowball of the way the Conquest map works right now. At least as far as like Soul Lane goes. Definitely some changes to Gold Fury and stuff down there. I think that the meta is not going to change all that much, and they're still going to be seeing like AFK, no kill lanes, Guardians, mages, stuff like that. And another thing that you have to think about is the fact that Warriors are no longer the complete bullies of Soul Lane. There are mages and Guardians right now that are actually better bullies than Warriors are and will successfully do what Warriors do while having a better late game. You know what I mean? Stuff like Ardia, stuff like Kuzumbo, stuff like Chang'e, stuff like Zhong Kui. Like all these gods are going to be just as good at doing what Warriors should do and being able to get this totem if the totem is a contentious objective. So I'm not too sure how much it's going to help, to be honest. Gold Fury, some changes to the way the Gold Fury works. So basically there are 3 different Gold Furies now. There's the Mine Gold Fury, there's the Oni Gold Fury, and then there's the Gold Fury, which is basically just gives you gold and XP. The Mine Gold Fury, it gives you extra % damage to jungle camps and monsters or bosses. So basically like Fire Giant and even Gold Fury. And then all the jungle camps, it's 5% and it stacks up to 3 times, so you can get up to 15% extra damage to jungle bosses. So basically that means if you're able to get all 3 of the Mine Gold Furies and go over to Fire Giant, you're going to be doing 15% extra damage to that, which is, in my opinion, you're already basically have won the game if you're able to get 3% or 3 of those, right? So I don't think this is that too big of a deal. And then there's the Oni Gold Fury, which I think this is actually a really interesting change and probably the most relevant thing in this entire patch notes is that if you get the Oni Gold Fury, you have in every single lane, your minions are empowered and they have extra protections and they do extra damage. So this just gives a lot of sieging opportunity to the players who are successfully getting this Oni Gold Fury and pushing off of it, and like maybe timing a siege off of it or something like that. Like, hey, everybody group up, we're going to go to the Oni Gold Fury, we're going to kill it, and then we're going to try and siege like this tier 1 tower and potentially get kills off it or something like that. Like just stuff like that is like, I think, really interesting and one of the more relevant changes in this patch notes. So basically, Fire Giant change is that there's going to be magma pools again. That's what it was before. They're bringing that back. Just making it a little bit harder to just AFK and not really think about how you're tanking Fire Giant. That way, you know, it makes it a little bit more intricate and makes players have to think while they're tanking it. And then all these jungle changes, basically, there's a lot of them, but all it's doing is it's making it tankier. It's making the buff camps tankier as the game progresses. Early on, they're going to still be easy to clear because that's like a good thing. That's what they wanted. That was the objective going into Season 5. But now they're going to be tankier heading later into the game, because right now you can just walk by a back camp like 20 minutes in the game and one-shot it and just be on your way. They want to kind of steer away from that and get towards a little bit more tanky, and you have to at least spend a little bit of time on it and maybe promote fights around these camps and stuff like that, because if you just one-shot it, it's just basically whoever gets there first. Now, hopefully, if they're a little bit tankier, there'll be a little bit more contention and conflict around these camps and stuff like that. And then now, Towers and Phoenixes have a visual for when the backdoor protections are on them. So that's pretty much it. Starting to lose my voice. That's why I choked up a lot during this patch notes and maybe stumbled over some words and some numbers and stuff like that. So sorry about that. However, I tried to go over everything, get you guys the most important information and stuff that I think is important, stuff that will shift. Nerfs, obvious buffs, things that will actually make a difference. So just basically stuff like that. Pretty interesting stuff. I guess for us soul laners, the most interesting thing is the totem and how much that's going to do. The fact that Guardians wasn't changed, like I said. The fact that most of the Guardians and stuff weren't even nerfed or anything like that, I think is pretty bad, and I don't see all these changes really affecting the Season 6 solo meta all that much. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see how much junglers and how much contention is around this totem, because if there's a lot of early game fighting, then maybe it'll promote warriors a little bit more to fight around that totem, and that might snowball in the fact that you're getting kills around that totem and not the fact that it's an objective. Not the objective itself, like gaining the objective isn't as important, but the kills that revolve around it. That might promote warriors a little bit more, but overall, right now, my initial thoughts are meta's not going to change all that much for the Season 6 solo meta. And the fact that my biggest disappointment right now are the lack of nerfs to percent pen items in this patch, the lack of nerfs to Opwash and Erlang, and the lack of nerf to Guardian's Blessing as far as nerfs go. And my other big disappointment as far as buffs go are the lack of buffs to more warriors, lack of buffs to some of these lower end gods like Arachne and Chalk, and just stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. I do like a lot of these changes in this patch, though, and I really think this is an interesting change. It's definitely going to mix up the meta, the Elixir speed change. So that is pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this patch notes review. Sorry it took so long. There's just so much to go over. And basically, for the most part, I just tried to read through it and then give my quick initial thoughts to it. If you want to know more or want to know more of my opinion about certain things, just ask in the comments below, or, you know, use my Discord or Twitter or anything like that. And I'll be happy to share my thoughts with you. So yeah, if you're confused with something that I said, just ask away and I'll try and clarify it. But once again, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'm going to upload the rest of A to Z series coming up. I'm basically done with it, so that's gonna be exciting. And I'm gonna be throwing in some new things into my gameplays. Not only the commentary, but some other things at the start of the game, just like little clips and stuff to make it more fun and interesting. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And I'll see you guys again for those gameplays. And I might actually even upload a Deceit gameplay, game called Deceit that I've been playing with my friends lately. So that's pretty much it. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.